For a closer look at China-U.S. economic ties, I'm joined now by Yan Liang. She's a professor of economics at Willamette University. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Elaine.
So, Professor, the new ambassador spoke about cooperation. So when it comes to both economies, how does that cooperation begin?
Right. So as we see, despite all the tensions and also the pandemic, there are really vibrant economic activities between the two countries. When you look at trade, this half year, China has imported $88 billion of goods from the United States, and that is a 52% of increase when you compare the previous 2 years average. And exports, China exported about $253 billion to the United States, and that represented a 35% of jump of the previous 2 years year-to-year average. And also we have seen, very robust financial flows from one country to between the two countries. So what that means is that, as the ambassador said, the door has been opened and it cannot and should not be closed. And in addition to these actual economic activities, I think there are a lot of cooperations and collaborations on rules and regulations as well. When you think about, data privacy, digital trade, and cybersecurity. And I think there's just a lot of common economic interests between the two countries that they can work together on.
Well, here in the U.S., consumers are seeing prices go up on pretty much everything for a number of reasons. The U.S. business community, corporations, investors, everyone seems caught in the middle right now between these two countries. And the U.S. business community is really trying to push the Biden administration to end the tariffs on China. That was even brought up during that diplomatic meeting in China last weekend. So how much influence do you think the business community wants to have on trying to resolve that part of this relationship?
Right, exactly. I think you nailed it, right? So these tariff war turned out to be really lose-lose situations for both countries. And as Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, has just pointed out, that the consumers are footing the bill. Tariff is just a tax on consumers, and by way of also increasing business costs. And so I think it's in the interest of both countries to really sit down together and talk about the next step to end this kind of tariff war. And I think business play a very important role here because they represents the U.S. economy. And I think the political actors should not go against the market and should not go against the interest of the people. And I think, interestingly, trade started as the source of the friction between the two countries. But I think now it seems that's the most fruitful ground for both countries to make a headway towards, thawing the very tense relationships right now.
You mentioned Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. She had a virtual meeting, one so far, with Liu He back in June. What do you think is happening, the conversations they're having offline?
Yeah, so we can only make guesstimates, but I think, Janet Yellen and Liu He both are, they are economists. They understand how the economy functions. So, and I think they will be talking about, at the very practical terms, what both countries can give and take in that kind of trading relationships. Of course, Yellen has talked about China's so-called unfair economic practices, or she has also showed concerns about, some of the usual claims about, human rights abuse in China. But at the end of the day, I think it's important, as the Treasury of the Secretary of Treasury, she needs to make sure that the economy functions well. And so she pointed out very clearly, this trade right now, the tariff war is hurting U.S. consumers. And I think also the imports from China would help to contain that inflationary pressure that the U.S. is having right now. So I think both officials should be talking more at more practical terms, in addition to, keeping that high-level diplomacy connections open.
Prior to the Trump administration, there was this official mechanism, and I wanted to see if you thought there was any chance of these two countries going back to that official economic dialogue that we saw between both countries to talk economics and other things. But, we saw that during the Bush administration, during the Obama administration. Trump got rid of it. Was that helpful? Is that something that both countries could consider returning to?
Absolutely. The strategic and economic dialogue that started in 2006 but ended by Trump back in 2018, I think it's a very effective way for both countries to sit down and really understand economic-wise, right, what is the red line and what is the area that both countries are interested in cooperating. I think that communications are really important, right, to avoid any misunderstandings or miscalculations. And I think at this point, facing with so many global challenges, be it climate change or economic recovery or technological advancements, I do think it would be really helpful for both countries to open more dialogues on economic fronts to talk about the practical issues. And so I'm still looking forward to the review of the trade deal by Catherine Tai and the Chinese counterparts. But again, I think these kinds of dialogues would be very helpful.
All right, Professor Yan Liang, always great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.